All right, so get ready, because today we're going deep, really deep into the story of William Wickline.
Yeah.
This guy, right, went from what seemed like a pretty normal life to, well, some truly brutal crimes.
Yeah, a really fascinating case, for sure.
We've been digging through court records, newspaper articles, even some stuff online,
Hmm.
and it's all starting to paint a picture of how this, average guy from Ohio ended up a convicted murderer.
Right.
But here's the thing. There's still so many questions, even after all this time. So,
Absolutely.
where do we even begin with William Wickline?
Well, I think what's really striking about him is how different his early life was from what he ended up doing.
Yeah, like a total disconnect.
Right. I mean, he didn't come from a broken home or anything like that.
Okay.
Actually, a lot of what we found suggests he had a good family, did well in school,
Right.
even had potential as an athlete.
Wow.
You wouldn't look at that and think future murderer.
Not at all.
It's really kind of crazy.
So it's almost like he had this double life or something?
Yeah, kind
Like, on the one hand, you've got this kid wrestling for his high school team,
Yeah.
involved in student government.
Yeah.
But then, at the same time, he's getting into petty theft, which, quickly escalates. Factory, selling drugs.
Uh-uh.
He even ran a prostitution ring. It's a huge shift.
And it makes you wonder, what was that turning point? What happened?
Yeah. Was there some big event, or did he just kind of slowly,
Yeah, lose his way, morally.
Right.
We may never know for sure, but it's a huge question in criminology and psychology.
Okay, so then he ends up in prison.
Mm-hmm.
You'd think that would be a wake-up call.
You would think.
But from what I've read, it seems like it might have actually made him worse.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Like prison actually hardened him.
It's a pattern you see sometimes, unfortunately.
So what did he do inside? Just, lift weights and get tougher?
He did bulk up, yeah, which is pretty common.
Yeah.
But he also got really into psychology, reading tons of books about it.
Really?
Yeah.
That's kind of creepy, actually.
It is pretty unsettling.
Was he trying to figure out how criminals think?
Maybe. Or maybe he was trying to, analyze himself.
Ooh, that's an interesting thought.
Right. Or here's a scary thought. What if he was learning how to manipulate people better?
Oh, wow.
Learning how to be a better criminal.
Okay, that's a seriously chilling thought.
Right.
To think he might have been using psychology like that.
It definitely adds a whole new layer to his story.
And it makes what he did after he got out in 1979 even more disturbing.
Oh, yeah.
Everything got more intense.
Definitely a noticeable shift. His crimes became way more violent. He was obsessed with knives. And his relationships with women were all super volatile, even dangerous.
It's like whatever darkness was already in him, it just exploded.
It seems that way.
And then the first murder that really put him on the map, at least as the butcher, happened that same year.
1979, yeah.
The murder of Charles Marsh in West Virginia.
That one was rough.
That crime scene was just brutal.
Yeah, definitely not for the faint of heart.
So Marsh was found decapitated in a hotel room.
Yeah, his head was on the nightstand.
Ugh.
Hands cuffed behind his back.
And his hair was combed.
Yeah, it was combed.
Why would someone do that?
Well, it's pretty creepy, right?
It's like something straight out of a horror movie.
Yeah.
What does that tell us about the killer?
Well, I think it shows a really disturbing level of control.
Oh,
This wasn't some spur of the moment, heat of the moment thing.
Right.
This was planned, calculated, almost ritualistic.
Ritualistic.
And the way the head was cut off, it was clean. 1 or 2 cuts.
Like he knew what he was doing.
Exactly. That suggests some level of skill, maybe he had some knowledge of anatomy.
So the nickname the Butcher, it really fits.
Chillingly accurate.
So did they think it was Wickline right away?
Not at first.
Why not?
Because Marsh was involved in the drug trade, so they thought it was a hit.
Ah, okay.
And while Wickline was already on their radar, they didn't have enough to connect him to the murder.
So it went cold.
For a while, yeah.
But then a few years later, things got even worse.
It's a lot worse.
The double murder of Christopher and Peggy Lurch in Ohio.
That's the case that really sealed his fate, the one that put him on death row.
Okay, so let's talk about that. It was brutal.
Yeah, incredibly brutal.
So what happened?
Well, basically, Wickline and his girlfriend at the time, Teresa Kemp, went to the Lurch's house.
Okay.
They said it was to collect on a drug debt,
Right.
but it was a total setup.
Oh, man, I can already sense this is bad.
It gets really bad.
What did he do?
He lured Christopher into the bathroom and, slit his throat.
Oh, my God.
And then he made Kemp, his own girlfriend, help him strangle Peggy.
He made her.
Yeah, she was asleep at the time.
Wow. That's just
Yeah.
Horrifying. The fact that he made his girlfriend do
So it
that.
shows how manipulative he was.
Yeah, and how much control he had over her.
Exactly.
It's bone-chilling.
It really is.
So what happened to the bodies?
He took them to the bathtub and, well, it's gruesome.
Oh, God.
He decapitated and dismembered them.
He what?
Yeah, and then he scattered the body parts in different dumpsters all over Franklin County.
You mean he just threw them away like trash?
Pretty much.
That's just
Yeah.
sickening. Did they ever find the bodies?
No. Sadly, the remains were never recovered.
That's awful.
It made the investigation harder, and obviously the families never got any closure.
I can't even imagine. But there was one detail that came out, right?
Yeah.
Something really creepy.
Yeah. He kept Peggy Lurch's wedding ring
He kept it.
as a souvenir.
Wow. I don't even know what to say to that. What kind of person does that?
It really makes you wonder what was going on in his head.
It's beyond messed up. To kill someone, dismember them, and then keep a piece of them like it's some kind of trophy.
It's a level of depravity that's hard to grasp.
So how did he finally get caught? Was it because of the ring?
Actually, it was something else entirely.
Really?
He got arrested for breaking into a drugstore.
He was robbing a drugstore.
Yeah.
After all that.
It seems crazy, right?
So, back to his old habits. But what about the murders?
Well, while he was in jail for the drugstore thing, his girlfriend, Teresa Kemp, finally confessed.
She told him everything.
Yeah, she broke down and told the police everything.
So she was the one who brought him down.
She was a key witness, for sure.
Wow.
Her testimony helped get him indicted for the Lurch murders. They even linked him back to Charles Marsh, but they dropped those charges since he was already facing the death penalty.
So even with a death sentence, there were still all these unanswered questions.
Right, and that's what we're going to get into next. All those other cases where he was a suspect.
Yeah, the other potential victims.
Similarities are just too much to ignore. It's a really unsettling part of the story.
So stay tuned, folks, because we're going even deeper into the dark world of William Wickline.
It's going to get pretty intense.
Okay, so we know William Wickline was convicted for killing Christopher and Peggy Lurch, but like you said, there are these other cases, other possible victims, and it makes you wonder just how far his, reign of terror actually went.
Right.
So let's get into some of these suspected murders.
Yeah, definitely. So there are at least 3 other cases where the similarities are just, too strong to ignore.
Okay.
They all add to the mystery surrounding Will Wickline.
Yeah, for sure.
One that really stands out is the disappearance of this guy, Torrey Gaynor, back in 1978. He was a gambler from Fairfield County, Ohio.
Okay.
And informants claimed that Wickline killed him.
Hmm.
And not only that, but that he got rid of the body the same way he did with the Lurch. Dismemberment, scattered remains in dumpsters.
Wait, so this was even before the murders we talked about? Before Marsh and the Lurches?
Yep, even before that.
That's scary. It's like he was practicing or something. Getting more confident.
It's a disturbing thought, for sure.
But if it was all based on what these informants said, why wasn't he ever charged?
Well, that's the frustrating thing. There wasn't enough evidence.
Oh, yeah.
They never found anything to officially connect him to Gaynor's disappearance. So the case stayed open.
Huh. So one potential victim just vanishes. What about the other cases you mentioned?
Okay, so fast forward to January 1983. Down in Miami, Florida.
Miami.
Yeah, Miami. They found the remains of a man in a canal.
Okay.
They couldn't identify him.
Mm.
But here's the thing that really got investigators' attention.
What's that?
The medical examiner said the cuts on the body were really precise, like almost surgical.
Sounds like our butcher, all right. But Miami,
Yeah.
that's a long way from Ohio.
Mm.
Was there any connection between Wickline and Florida?
That's the question, right?
Yeah.
Investigators looked into a few things. Could he have been hired for a hit, like they thought with Charles Marsh?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was a drug deal gone bad. Remember, he was known to travel for his, business.
Right.
Or maybe this guy was just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
So another mystery. It's frustrating, There could be answers out there, but we may never know. Okay, you said there was a third case.
Yeah, this one's closer to home again. October 1983 in Delaware County, Ohio.
Okay.
They found the body of a 15-year-old boy named John Muncie. He had been dismembered.
Oh, my God. A 15-year-old?
Yeah. This one's particularly sad because investigators think he was just an innocent victim.
What do you mean?
Like he might have just stumbled onto something he shouldn't have seen. Maybe a drug deal gone wrong.
That's horrible. Imagine being 15 years old and seeing something like that.
It's awful.
So they thought Wickline might have killed him to cover his tracks.
That was a strong theory. I mean, Wickline was known to be violent, And he definitely wouldn't hesitate to get rid of anyone who could be a problem for him.
Yeah, to protect his secrets.
Exactly. But again, they couldn't find enough evidence to directly connect him to the murder.
It's kind of mind-blowing to think about how many victims there might actually be. And it makes you wonder, right?
About what?
Like, what if there are even more we don't know about? People who just disappeared and nobody ever found out what happened to them.
It's definitely possible, especially with someone like Wickline, who was good at staying under the radar.
Yeah. Oh, and speaking of unsettling connections, didn't they think Wickline might have been involved in that other big case? The one with Annette Cooper and Todd Schultz?
Yeah, you're right. For a while, he was a suspect in that case. The murders happened in 1984.
That one was crazy. Didn't they actually convict the wrong guy?
They did. Annette's stepfather, Dale Johnston, was wrongly convicted. He was actually on death row for years before they finally exonerated him in 2008.
Wow. What a nightmare.
It's a terrible story.
But why would they suspect Wickline in the first place? Was it just because the murders were so brutal?
It was partly that, yeah, and also because they knew Wickline was active in the area at the time.
So they had to look into him.
Exactly. It was a long shot, but they had to consider all possibilities.
Yeah, especially in a case like that. And it's weird, right? Even though Wickline wasn't involved in that case, they did finally solve the murder of John Muncie, the 15-year-old.
That's right. They solved it in 2020 using DNA evidence.
Really? So who did it?
A guy named Daniel Anderson. But he had already died back in 2013.
Huh. So at least John's family finally got some answers.
Yeah, it doesn't bring him back, but at least there's some closure.
I guess so.
Mm.
But there are still so many unanswered questions about Wickline and all the other potential victims. It's like we're only seeing a small part of the picture.
Yeah, it's like we have this map with huge blank spaces. We know there's more out there, but we may never get to see it.
That's a creepy way to think about it.
It's definitely haunting.
So we've got this guy, right, convicted of 3 murders, suspected in at least 3 more, and even considered a suspect in a case where an innocent man was almost executed. It's hard to even wrap your head around it. Like, how do we make sense of someone like that?
That's the question everyone asks, right? How does someone become capable of doing such terrible things?
Yeah.
It's a question that fascinates and terrifies people who study criminal behavior. And as we move on, we're going to try to delve into that. We'll look at the psychology of William Wickline, explore some theories about his motivations, and really try to understand what could drive a person to commit such horrific acts.
Okay, that's heavy stuff, but I'm ready. Let's dive into the mind of a killer.
It's really hard to stop thinking about those psychology books, you know?
Yeah.
The ones Wickline was reading in prison. Like, was he really trying to understand how criminals think,
Or was he using it to become a better criminal? It's a chilling thought.
It is, and it's not like he was some, creepy loner. He could be really charming, apparently. Some people say he was almost hypnotic.
Yeah, you see that a lot with psychopaths.
Really?
That ability to put on a mask. Seem normal on the outside, but inside it's a whole different story. It's scary to think someone you might like, someone you think is nice, could be capable of those things.
Absolutely. And it makes you question people.
Totally. Like, who can you trust?
Right. It's a natural reaction, especially with cases like this. But it's important to remember that most people aren't like that.
Right, right.
And while we might never fully understand why someone does these things, we can at least try to figure out the pattern.
Yeah, like what makes them tick.
Exactly. Try to put together a psychological profile.
So when you look at Wickline, what really stands out? Like, what can we learn from what he did?
I think one thing that's really clear is that he was obsessed with power.
Power, okay.
Yeah, and control. The way he planned his crimes, the manipulation, it all points to that.
And the way he, got rid of the bodies.
Yeah.
Cutting them up, scattering the parts.
Right. It's not just about hiding the evidence.
No.
It's about dehumanizing the victim. Like they're not even a person anymore.
Wow. That's a heavy thought.
It's a horrifying thought.
Yeah.
And don't forget the trophies.
The trophies. Oh, you mean like Peggy Lurch's ring?
Exactly. Keeping those things, it's another sign of his need for power.
Like he wanted to remember what he did, relive it.
It's twisted, but yeah, most of us can't even begin to understand that.
I know. To actually enjoy hurting other people, it's just beyond me.
And that's a key difference between someone like Wickline and the rest of us.
What do you mean?
He had no empathy.
Empathy.
Yeah, like he couldn't understand or share the feelings of others.
Like something was missing.
Right. A piece of his humanity was gone.
So how do we explain it? How does a seemingly normal kid become a cold-blooded killer?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah. Was there something that happened? Like a trauma or something?
It's possible, or maybe those dark urges were always there just waiting to come out.
Hmm. It's a little scary to think about, honestly. Like, anyone could have that darkness inside them.
It's a reminder that evil can hide anywhere. We might never fully understand it, but we can try to learn from it.
Learn from it, okay?
Yeah, try to recognize the warning signs. Maybe even prevent something like this from happening again.
Well, we've certainly been on a journey today. It's been a lot to take in. The story of William Wickline.
It's a dark story, a reminder of just how much darkness there is in the world.
But there's good out there, too.
Right, of course. For every Wickline, there are countless others who choose a better path.
That's good to remember. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back soon with another look into the unknown.